What is the social science? So you have hard sciences. You might have heard that term. You know, hard sciences is going to be like your physics, your chemistry, astronomy, that kind of thing. Things that are eminently measurable, that have relations more or less to the natural world. So with physics, you shoot an arrow up in the air, you can measure its velocity going out, you can measure your trajectory, you can measure the distance that it traveled. And then you can use that to test, is our existing trajectory distance formula accurate, right? Does it hold up in real world conditions? That's a hard science. Compare that with the social science. Social sciences would be like your sociologies, political science, economics, of course. Not really history, but kind of, I don't know why I said history. Not history. History is more of humanities. But it can kind of blend in a little bit. Psychology can be considered maybe like more of a harder social science, so to speak. But social sciences tend to deal with people. In a social science, it's still a science, so we hypothesize, we experiment, we test. Okay, but it's different from a natural science in that human behavior is key. Okay, so with economics, you're going to still hypothesize. For instance, if you're writing a paper on the minimum wage, and I'm going to kind of go into one of the papers that is big on that. So the hypothesis could be, does the minimum wage increase unemployment, right? And you kind of have a ground theoretical basis for that. I believe that if the minimum wage was raised from $12 to $15, industries who have products that cost more than $15 to make will not see a profit. Therefore, they'll start shutting down. If those industries shut down, the employees for that industry will not have that job. Alternatively, they can stay in business, but they have to cut costs. If labor costs are set at $15 because that's government mandated minimum wage, and your good costs $14, or you can get your good you can sell your good for $14. You got to drop your cost down to $15. To do so, you might have to either fire workers or automate or not hire additional workers. That might be also increasing the unemployment rate. So the theory is that if you increase the minimum wage, there might be additional unemployment because it increased costs for business, who will either have to respond by decreasing costs, ergo by hiring less labor, or by shutting down. So that's your hypothesis. Then they'll do what's called an experiment, but we have to kind of do what's called like a natural experiment, right? You're not just going to set two humans in a laboratory, have them run out of business, and then, or I guess you have to do 4 humans because it's employer, employee, but have them run a business, and then all of a sudden increase the minimum wage for the employees on one side and not the other, and see if there's layoffs. You can't do that. That doesn't make any sense, right? You can't just have a contrived laboratory setting for the minimum wage. Like that doesn't. You're never going to recreate what actual businesses are like. Or if you're doing kind of like other things like studying unemployment as a result of like government policy, like how much the government spends on or how much the government taxes or that kind of thing. Again, you're not going to be able to do that in a laboratory setting. So economics doesn't condone the study, the experiment on humans. We don't give people drugs and see how they react to like a pharmaceutical trial or something like that. We can't do that. So we conduct what's called a natural experiment. Okay. So a natural experiment So I'm going to kind of explain it using one of the more famous ones, which is called CARD. I just mentioned it, but it's also a study on the minimum wage. Okay, so I'm going to kind of draw out a little map here. So basically, once again, the theory is that if you, the theory of the testing is, does the minimum wage increase unemployment by increasing costs of labor for businesses? Okay. So what's this little rectangle box over here? This is Pennsylvania. You know it, you love it. It would be the best state on earth, but there's Pittsburgh in it, so it's not quite there. Here's a better state, maybe. It's got Bon Jovi. You guys are probably from here if you're from RCBC. Bruce Springsteen, all that good stuff, right? New Jersey. All right. So let's say, I don't know the exact year that the study was done, but let's say 2005. Okay. Let's say that in 2005, in particular, New Jersey raised the minimum wage, and Pennsylvania did not. We got communities in this little sliver here of, like, let's call it the Philadelphia area, the best city on earth. Philadelphia kind of has communities that are similar to it. So Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania are probably similar to like Burlington and Camden County, more or less. And you can match. So what the researchers did is they found individuals and individual demographics that matched those in New Jersey. So they matched them on things like ethnicity, gender, age, years of experience, and then of course wage, right? So they did what's called a match function, and they found individuals who are, for all intents and purposes, similar or identical in Pennsylvania as they are in New Jersey, along that southeastern PA, eastern New Jersey border. Okay, so think about it. It's like you have a copy of yourself who's making the same amount as you, same demographics as you, across the border. Okay, and all of a sudden in 2005, New Jersey raises minimum wage. Okay, so what they'll do is they'll do the match before 2005, and they'll match it across like 2000 to 2005, and they'll see, okay, these are the people whose wages rose in lockstep. Okay, similar people, similar wage patterns. Okay, all of a sudden in 2005 you have a change. Okay, and New Jersey now has a minimum wage. They'll see if, given these these similar people, if Pennsylvania sees no change in its unemployment and New Jersey sees a positive change in unemployment, that would be a sign that the minimum wage, which would be really the only difference between these two, individuals matched across these two borders, if the minimum wage increased the level of unemployment because there was really nothing else happening that year, right? Nothing else that could at least be factored out that was unique to Pennsylvania versus not New Jersey, right? So they actually found that it didn't increase the minimum wage, but more, like that, of course that's important because I think it's important to know that unemployment might not increase with the minimum wage. It's a good thing to know, of course. There's a lot of caveats and there's back and forth on that. But more to the point of what I'm trying to convey here is, imagine you were doing the same thing with a pharmaceutical study, right? You have two groups, one gets a placebo, one gets the medicine, right? And you see if the medicine increased, let's say the medicine cured COVID, right? You can't just give someone medicine and say cured COVID, you're done, right? You need a control group. In this case, Pennsylvania serves as the control group. New Jersey serves as the trial group, right? This is a good example of a natural experiment. You match them. You look at similar groups as though they're the same person, basically, as though you can match real easily. Okay. At any rate, this all goes back to the concept of a social science. Social science deals with human behavior. Economics is a social science, and economists perform natural experiments where we look at existing data and we tweak it with kind of these cool statistical methodologies like the matching function, okay, or what's called regressions, which is 90% of what a lot of economists do, and like modeling, and we use mathematical kind of theoretical math to underpin our hypotheses. Okay. All right, so the last bullet point on this slide, I just kind of want to talk about what are goods, what are services, production, distribution, and consumption. So a good is anything physically created for consumption. Okay, so this is a good, right? This can of soda. This laptop that I'm presenting on is a good. This is a good, right? Your iPhone is a good. Okay, things that are created that you then use to consume. Okay, a service, on the other hand, is not necessarily a physical asset that's created, but it's something that someone does for you, like a service, right? So this lecture is considered a service. You're paying for it, which isn't necessarily, you don't have to pay for it to be a service, right? But it's something that I'm acting upon in order to provide you some benefit, right? That's a service. Production is the act of creating that good or service, right? So when the aluminum company has their little machinery stamping the shape of this can, that is production, right? Me spending way too much time trying to figure out how to do video editing software, that is production, okay? And then distribution is the act of sending out the good to potential consumers of those goods and services, right? So the orange soda company will put their cans at the back of a truck, and they'll ship it, from Detroit to Philadelphia to New Jersey. That's distribution. It'll go into like a grocery store. You'll see it at the Acme. You'll pick it up, right? That's distribution. Me putting the lectures on Blackboard is also a form of distribution, right? That's how you see the service. It translated from production to consumption. And then finally, consumption is what it sounds like. This is consumption in the literal sense. I've literally just consumed part of a good, right? You right now are consuming this lecture, okay? Consumption is the act of receiving the benefit of a good or service. And I use the term benefit lightly because not all consumption is necessarily good. You can be consuming toxic air, right? That's not good, but it is a good in some sense or another, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be packaged for purchase to be a good, but if you're consuming it, it's a good or service.